Welcome back, MTN Giants podcast. Doing a preview for the Giants at the Commanders in week number 2. Commanders are 1.5 point favorites at home, which is interesting because on a neutral field, the Giants would be favored in this game. So Vegas is telling us the Giants might be the better team, but they are underdogs because they're on the road. Some of the main injuries in this game. There was the Darius Slayton concussion, but he's good to go. Neighbors had the knee injury pop up Thursday. A bit concerning, but he's good to go now. Nick McLeod's out with a knee injury. Same for Darius Muasau. For the Commanders, their rookie Johnny Newton's making to look his NFL debut. He had a foot injury, missed week 1. I also saw that Clelin Ferrell, with a knee injury, did not practice on Friday, so he might miss as well, so a couple of hits to their defensive line. It goes without saying, this is a massive game for the Giants. I think if they lose this game, the season probably spirals out of control and they get off to like an 0-4 start, maybe even worse. I forget who they play in week 5, but point is, I just think if they lose this game, a lot of bad stuff may happen. If they win this game, it buys themselves more time. I won't be super confident with the rest of the season if they win this game because they have played well in this game at Washington the past few years, especially during the Daniel Jones era. They won this game with Tommy DeVito last year. Honestly, this is a must-win game. You hate to say it in week 2. The Commanders may be saying the same thing in their locker room. They may be saying, oh, we get to play the Giants. This is great. So ultimately, I think for both teams, probably a must win. If you're Washington, you definitely have more patience with a rookie quarterback. And it's Dan Quinn's first year there, GM's first year there. There's a lot more patience to be afforded there. But if you're the Giants with a year 6 quarterback making a lot of money, you are in year 3 of your regime with Dable and Shane, there's a lot more pressure for the Giants in my opinion. For the Commanders offense, we'll start with the offensive line for them. It's not great, but it's not awful either. I've always liked Sam Cosmi. I saw he got an extension. I've always been a fan of his game. Tyler Biadasz was brought over from the Cowboys to play center. Allegretti from the Chiefs was brought over to play guard. So they made some improvements on the offensive line, but I think ultimately the tackles are pretty exploitable for the most part. Their left tackle is a third-round pick, Brandon Coleman. This should be a much easier matchup for Brian Burns and Kayvon. Brian Burns and Kayvon, for the most part, have always played much better against easier competition, which makes sense, but you wish it was kind of not that way. I always wish they would show up no matter what the matchup is. Those guys got handled by Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw last week, but against weaker tackles in Washington, Andrew Wiley at right tackle is not too bad, but left tackle specifically, a third-round rookie in Brandon Coleman, that's a matchup they can look to exploit, hopefully. Of course, Jaden Daniels, he's making his first career home start for Washington. I'm sure the crowd will be very hyped up for that one. He struggled as a passer last week. It was a lot of just one read and go. If the first read wasn't open, he would just run. He had a good rushing game on the ground, 16 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So Daniels, of course, going back to his LSU days, can obviously beat you on the ground. The Giants have to look to take away that first read, have a quarterback spy, and try to keep him in that pocket as long as they can. The running back room is pretty good. Brian Robinson's still there. He was pretty good last week. He had a good receiving day. Austin Eckler came over from the Chargers, and he looks pretty good last week. He had a couple runs where he looked spry. I know he's not, he's probably like 28, 29 now. So maybe Eckler early in the season can have some juice left. McLaurin and Zach Ertz are probably the main receivers for this team. McLaurin's been around for a while, of course. Zach Ertz, his first year in Washington. Seems like he could be their second target. I would not be surprised. They have Luke McCaffrey, Zacchaeus, the former Falcon, and I think he was on the Eagles last year. Diami Brown out of North Carolina can make some splash plays here and there. There is a new offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury. I think a lot of Washington fans are not the biggest fan of his, and I'm sure the Cardinals fans would say the same thing. It did not work out as a head coach, but for Kingsbury, they are probably going to have more of an up-tempo offense. I feel like their running game is not too bad, Washington, but the pass game with Kingsbury is definitely a concern. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if Commanders fans want to run them out of town, but it's pretty early, so I don't want to jump the gun yet. For the Commanders defense, their secondary last week was ranked worst by PFF by a lot. Their secondary really struggled versus Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, especially in the first half. I saw that their first round pick from last year, their corner, Emmanuel Forbes, is out with a thumb injury, having thumb surgery. And I feel bad for Forbes because people were saying this is a big loss for the Giants because Forbes has obviously struggled in his young NFL career. So maybe having Forbes there would have helped the Giants ultimately, but he will not be there on Sunday. The Commanders did sign some veterans. They got guys from the Cowboys. They brought over Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu to play linebacker. From Dallas, they brought over Dorrance Armstrong, who I was a big fan of in free agency, Dante Fowler, guys that come over from that Dan Quinn defense, who of course is now the head coach for Washington. But they did lose a lot of talent over the past couple years. Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Kendall Fuller went to Miami, Cameron Curl went to the Rams. So a lot of good young players are now gone, but they did replace them with some veterans and some good rotational pass rusher type players. As I said, the secondary is awful. If Daniel Jones cannot succeed in this matchup, I would say it's probably over. This is like the tailor-made matchup. If you're a struggling quarterback, this is what you want. You want to see this Commanders secondary that is now down their first-round corner from last year. Yes, once again, it might not be the biggest loss for the Commanders, but you have a team that has lost a lot of talent in that secondary, Fuller and Cameron Curl. So if Daniel Jones looks the way he did last week, this week, it's most likely over for him. And honestly, this might be his last Giants career start, which is crazy to think about. But if this goes as bad as it did last week, I don't see how the Giants can trot him out again for week 3. I could be wrong, but it's definitely on the table. In the first half last week, Baker Mayfield was 16 for 19 for 174 yards and a touchdown. Baker overall had 4 touchdowns on the day, no turnovers. And I went back and watched Baker because I wanted to see how much of it was the Commanders' defense being awful and how much of it was just Baker and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and the rookie Jalen McMillan, how much of it was them just being good at football. And I would say a lot of it was the Buccaneers being very good. Baker made some really impressive plays. There were about 2 or 3 plays where Baker looked like he was going to be sacked, got out of it somehow, maneuvered the pocket, made a great throw. Threw with anticipation. He knew he was going to get hit on some throws and still made those throws. Baker was surgical in that game. The front 7 for the Commanders is not that bad. It's really not. On paper, I mentioned the veteran linebackers, Louvu and Bobby Wagner, of course, a future Hall of Famer. But you still have Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, maybe Cleveland Ferrell, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler. They have names there. They're not awful on the defensive line. So if the Giants' offensive line, which once again was pretty good last week, but if they don't show up in this game, it could get ugly. Dan Quinn versus Daniel Jones in the past has not gone well for Daniel Jones. This is a tweet from Jake Barrow. Daniel Jones versus Dan Quinn in a 3.5 game sample size. Jones is 61 for 113, 54% passing, 626 yards on 5.53 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions. Now, obviously, this was against the Cowboys. They had more defensive talent for the most part. Not saying Washington is awful, but once again, I think their secondary is not good. So you can definitely, once you get past that front 7 in Washington, you can beat them deep. Does Daniel Jones have it in him to do that and take advantage of that matchup? I'm not confident in saying that. If it's more of last week where guys pop open, but Jones does not trust himself to make the throw, he has to see it open first, it's going to be a problem. He has to trust his receivers, has to trust his instincts, has to trust the play, and just go with it. There's nothing to lose if you're Daniel Jones at this point. Just go for it. So for the Giants offense, as I said, this is probably it for Daniel Jones if things don't go well. Jalen Hyatt played 23% of snaps last week. There was a chance Slayton may have missed this game with a concussion, but he's good to go. So, I was thinking there might be a chance Slayton misses and Hyatt sees an uptick in snaps. That's not going to happen now, so that's unfortunate for him. So we'll see how much he plays. I feel like a lot of fans were not happy about Hyatt's usage, myself included in that. So I just don't know why. Why did you trade up for him in the 3rd round to not use him on a team that's pretty much rebuilding? I just don't get it. Bellinger at tight end only played 23% of snaps. Theo Johnson led with 86% of snaps at tight end. And Chris Manhertz actually had more than Bellinger at 28%, 5% more than Bellinger. So some interesting snap rotations for the Giants and snap percentages on offense. I'm looking forward to that and seeing who plays more. Does Hyatt play more? Does Theo Johnson continue to play this much? So that's pretty much it for this game. If I had to predict it once again, I would probably say something like 24-20 Washington. I just cannot pick the Giants to win right now. After what I saw last week in a game that should have been a pretty even matchup. I think when you're home versus a Minnesota Vikings team without their starting quarterback, and it's just like that was a game to just come out and prove that like we're a decent team. Like I know the Giants are not going to win the Super Bowl this year, but to come out and lay an egg like that in your first home game and your first game of the year, I just don't have much confidence backing this team. Of course, Daniel Jones looks like a guy who his confidence is shot, and that just might be who he is, and it may never recover, which is a shame. You hate to see a player go through that, but at the same time, I just don't know if Jones can flip a switch. You know, it's like Jones has always played well versus Washington, but he also looks broken right now, so I don't know which version they're going to get. So if they get the broken version of Jones, I don't care if they're playing some high school team. They're not going to win. So that's something to look at. I just can't pick them right now. And I hope I'm wrong because I don't want to go into week 3 with the mindset of like, all right, let's go start watching college quarterbacks. Like that's, you know, it's like, I feel like if they lose on Sunday, the season's probably over. So I hope they pull it out. So my guess is going to be 24-20 Washington. Let's get into the spread picks where I just went under 500 last week. I was at 6-7-1. So I failed you guys. My bad on that. Well, let's be better this week. First game is going to be the Saints at the Cowboys. Cowboys favorites by 6. For me, that's too many points. I don't love the Saints, but 6 is a lot. The Saints, I feel like, have a good enough defense to stay somewhat close in this game. I don't think Dallas has the offensive firepower that they used to. So with that being said, I think Dallas probably wins this game, but I would think maybe by 3 or 4, maybe 6, maybe it's a push. So I'll take New Orleans, and I think New Orleans has a chance to win this game if they play a perfect game. We'll see if they do. So Saints plus 6 for me. Next is Baltimore. They're going to be at home hosting the Raiders. Baltimore favorites by 9 points. I'm going to take Baltimore. I think this is a big Derrick Henry game. Probably 100 rushing yards, maybe 2 touchdowns. Baltimore, during the John Harbaugh era, has always beat up on bad teams. I see no difference here, so I think Baltimore wins this one by a lot. I mentioned Washington minus 1.5 will be my pick. For the Chargers, they are at the Panthers. Chargers minus 5. I'm going to take the Chargers. I think with Derek Brown being out for the Panthers and their run defense was already bad to begin with, you take away their best defensive lineman. It should be a huge day for J.K. Dobbins. Should be a nice day for Gus Edwards. I like this balanced approach of the Chargers. They ran the ball more than they passed last week. The pass rush was good for the Chargers last week. Should be another long day for the Panthers possibly, so Chargers minus 5 for me. Next, we have the Indianapolis Colts. They're at the Green Bay Packers, of course, with Jordan Love most likely out. I keep seeing he's questionable. I don't see how he's going to play. There was a slow motion replay of Jordan Love's knee literally popping. Like, I feel like to play the week after that is crazy. I know he had, an extra 2 days off, but to play after that would just be pretty crazy. So I think it's Malik Willis. I don't trust Willis as a passer. There should be a lot of running in this game. Even last week in a pretty high scoring game, the Colts only threw the ball 19 times. Richardson was 9 for 19. So with Willis, who's a better runner than passer, and same for Anthony Richardson at this point in his career, should be a lot of running in this game, but I would take the Colts minus 3. I think they win the game. For the Minnesota Vikings hosting the 49ers are 5-point favorites on the road. This one really confused me. I saw McCaffrey's out in this game, might go on IR, so if you took him in fantasy, I feel bad for you first overall. But I'm going to take Minnesota plus 5. A lot of hesitation in my voice. I hate this game. I don't want to bet it, but for the sake of this, I'll take Minnesota plus 5. We saw them play last week. I think their defense is better than most people expect. Sam Darnold in a revenge game versus the Niners. I don't even think he played for them, but he was on the bench for them last year. So Darnold revenge game. Mini defense is decent, so let's take the Vikings plus 5. Next is the Cleveland Browns at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars favorites by 3. I feel like no person in their right mind is going to take Cleveland, so I will. Cleveland plus 3 for me. Cleveland is going to be facing a Jaguars defense without Tyson Campbell, their number 1 corner. Look for Amari Cooper to possibly have a nice day, so I just feel like with spreads like this, it's pretty close. And like, think about it. Who the hell is going to take Cleveland after what Deshaun Watson just looked like? They must know something. I'll take Cleveland +3. Those are the type of bets that usually win. So the Seattle Seahawks, they are on the road at the Patriots. Patriots are favorites by 3.5. I'm sorry, Seattle is favored by 3.5. That'd be pretty weird. So yeah, Seahawks favorites by 3.5. I'm going to take Seattle -3.5. I don't love the Patriots offense. Their defense and their secondary specifically, I definitely underrated them coming into this year, but I don't trust the Patriots offense to be great. I like this Mike McDonald defense on the Seahawks. I think they'll do a good job against Brissett and this Patriots offense that lacks talent. So give me Seattle. It might only be like a 20-10 type of score, something like that, but I think the Seahawks win this one by, I would say, at least like a touchdown. So I'll take Seattle -3.5. The Jets are on the road at the Tennessee Titans, but they are favorites by 3.5. I'm going to take Tennessee +3.5. I think for Tennessee, these are two teams that have good defenses. I expect another pretty low-scoring game. The Jets may win by a field goal, but even in that case, I would win this spread with Tennessee. I will take the points at +3.5. Tampa Bay on the road at the Detroit Lions, a matchup of last year's playoffs where the Buccaneers kept that game close and honestly could have won. But I'll take Tampa +7.5. I do like what I saw from the Lions last week. The Lions defense is a little sketchy, but I think they'll be all right. But offensively, the Lions played a great game. But Tampa's offense was great last week. Their defense hopefully is good enough. I have my concerns about their pass defense, but I do believe they have some injuries as well. Winfield Jr.'s out, and I think one of their corners is out too. So it's a little shady, but I think the Buccaneers offense is good enough to keep up in this game, so I'll take them +7.5. The Rams are at the Cardinals. Cardinals are favorites by 1, and a lot of this is because of all the injuries that the Rams have. The Rams have 4 injuries on their starting offensive line. Puka Nakua's out as well. So I'm going to take Arizona -1. I just find it hard to believe that without their second best receiver and without more than half of their starting offensive line that the Rams can win this game. So I'll take Arizona. It's their home opener. I could obviously see the Rams winning this game, but they just have one job: shut down Cooper Kupp, and you win the game. So hopefully they can do that. Pittsburgh on the road at Denver. This is going to be one of those weird games where I'm sure Denver wins somehow, but Pittsburgh is favorites by 2.5. I will take the Steelers, but as I said, I could definitely see Denver winning this game. It's just something that would happen, but I don't know. I would hate myself for picking Denver and then seeing them down 21-3 on 5 o'clock on Sunday. So I'm just going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers -2.5. Don't love it. Not a lot of confidence, but still. The Bengals are at the Chiefs. A good game here. Chiefs by 6 in this spread. I'll take KC -6. There is no T. Higgins once again. I feel like with the Bengals, there's some weird vibes right now. We all saw the Joe Burrow shaking his wrist video. Not a big fan of that. So I have to see it first from the Bengals to believe in them. Obviously, they're alive to win this game. It would not shock me, but you have the Chiefs on extended rest. I like them a lot. The Bengals had an awful loss last week. It's tough to forgive them for that. So I'll take the Chiefs -6 at home. The Houston Texans hosting the Chicago Bears. The Texans are 6.5-point favorites. The Bears offense did not look so hot last week, and now with Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen highly questionable, I have my concerns about their offense even more. Houston's offense looked very good, so I'll take them -6.5. I know they can stop the run. Once again, I have my concerns about first road game for Caleb Williams. Does he make a bad decision? I know Caleb won his first game, but it was off a pick 6 and a punt block for a touchdown, so it wasn't like Caleb had that great of a game. So I'll take Houston by a touchdown there, -6.5. Philly hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Eagles favorites by 6.5. I will take the Eagles -6.5. I don't know what to think about this Falcons team, whether it's time to hit the panic button or not, but clearly Kirk Cousins looked a bit hampered by the Achilles last week. I'm not sure he's fully healthy. It's kind of like what I want to see from the Bengals. I want to see it first before I believe it. I did have a lot of faith in Atlanta coming into the year, but that was under the presumption that Cousins would be healthy, which I don't think he is right now. So I'm going to take Philly minus 6.5. It's a lot of points. I do have Bijan and Drake London for fantasy. I hope they go off, and I hope I'm wrong about this, but Philly is the better team. They are more well-rested, and I think they'll win this game by a decent amount. So I'll take the Eagles minus 6.5. Those are the picks for this week. So yeah, that'll do it for the preview. I know I kind of sped this up. I'm kind of pressed for time here, so my apologies. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys on Sunday night, hopefully reacting to a Giants win that can save their season for now, because as I said, if they lose, it's going to be ugly. And, well, not ugly. They might lose by 3, but, you know what I mean. If they lose this game, the season might get away from them much sooner than we would have expected. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, leave a like, subscribe, leave your score prediction in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys next time.